Hello, everyone, and happy Easter. This Sunday, we celebrate Divine Mercy Sunday. This Sunday is a great chance for us to commemorate and to celebrate God's infinite mercy for us in our lives. It's a way for us to continue celebrating the resurrection, that whenever we're in need of help, healing, or forgiveness, God is always there to help us. This Sunday, however, we also remember another important fact when it comes to divine mercy. And this might seem a bit strange, a bit difficult to comprehend, but the fact is this: God cannot help us, God cannot heal us, God cannot show us his forgiveness unless we're first clear to God about what we need in our life. God can't heal us unless we first show him our wounds. Now, this might feel a bit strange or seem a bit strange or difficult to understand, but I think for all of us, we experience something very similar in our lives, sometimes with our friends. Sometimes we might see or recognize that our friend is obviously going through a difficult experience, the way they're acting, the way they're behaving, and we'll approach our friend and ask them, "How are you doing?" And our friend only responds with, "Well, I'm fine. I'm okay." Now, there's not too much we can do for our friend except kind of be there with them, but we can't help them fully unless they express to us what they're going through, what their difficulty is, what their struggle is. This is kind of a truth always in life. We can't help people unless they first express or articulate what their need is. The same goes for us with God and God's mercy. God's mercy, healing, and forgiveness is always available, but we have to give God permission to act in our lives. We have to express to God first what our need is. In today's gospel, we see an excellent example of someone who is honest with God about what he needs, and this is the Apostle Thomas. Now, Thomas oftentimes gets a bad rap. We call Thomas Doubting Thomas. And certainly in today's gospel, which is taken from the end of John's gospel, the faith of Thomas is not as it should be. And Jesus ultimately tells Thomas, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing." So Thomas's faith isn't what it should be, but at the same time, Thomas is an example for us to follow. Why? Well, Thomas is clear with God and with everybody else about what he needs. He has that honesty. So we all know the story, right? So Jesus has appeared to the apostles and Thomas isn't there. Jesus is risen from the dead. He appears to the apostles and they go to Thomas then and say, "Look, we've seen the Lord. He is risen. He is alive." And Thomas responds with those famous words, "Unless I see those marks in his hands that the nails made, unless I see the mark in his side and put my finger in these holes, I will not believe." Again, Thomas's faith isn't what it should be, but at the same time, Thomas has the honesty, the transparency to express what he needs. He's struggling with his faith. He needs some help. And then we see what happens next is quite remarkable. Jesus comes and gives Thomas exactly what he's looking for. Jesus comes and appears to Thomas and says, "Look, here are the marks in my hands, the mark in my side. Put your finger in these holes. Doubt no longer, but believe." And what happens next is actually quite extraordinary. What happens next is that Thomas, we read, doesn't actually put his finger in these holes. Thomas comes and believes right away. And if you're to do a search for images, for example, from the scene from today's gospel, you'll more often than not find that Thomas is depicted as putting his finger in these holes of Jesus' hands or into the hole of Jesus' side. But in the gospel, we don't read that Thomas actually does this. Just seeing Jesus is enough. Having Jesus offer his help is enough for Thomas's doubt to go away, and Thomas believes. And then what happens next is even more extraordinary. Thomas offers a profession of faith that's more profound than any profession of faith that we find in the Gospels. Thomas says to Jesus, "My Lord and my God." Thomas just doesn't call Jesus Messiah or Savior or even just Lord. Thomas calls Jesus his God. This is the highest expression we find in the Gospels. So it's quite remarkable what happens in the life of this character, Thomas, and why he's an example for us to follow. Thomas is honest about what he needs, what he's struggling with, that he's having this doubt, and because he can express this need, Jesus can come and give him exactly what he's looking for. And as a result of this, Thomas's faith grows beyond that of anybody else that we find in the Gospels. This is the highest profession of faith. We can learn then on this Divine Mercy Sunday from Thomas's example. perhaps we can spend some time today to be honest with ourselves about what we need from God. What are your struggles, your difficulties? What are your doubts? We can learn from the example of Thomas the importance of being honest with God in prayer about what we need. Because when we do this, Jesus, just like he did for Thomas, will come and approach us in our moment of need, give us what we're looking for, and help us to grow in a greater faith, so that we too, like Thomas, can profess to Jesus, my Lord and my God. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and take care.